Hi, I want to welcome everyone. I'm Whitney Horton with the Smart Business Academy, and I am bringing in today a very special guest. We have Patrick Flood, the CEO of Owners in Honor. And I want to say, first of all, welcome, Patrick. I want to welcome you in. Hello.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Whitney. It's really been a great relationship that's developed with the entirety of the people that I've met through the Tarkenton Network. It's been fantastic.
They are amazing. And speaking of amazing groups that you've worked with, I want to talk about yours.
Okay.
So tell me about the mission. Tell me about the mission of Owners in Honor. What did you guys do what do you aim to do to help veterans?
Yeah, in the simplest way possible, it's that we want to enable veterans who are exiting the service to be able to purchase small businesses. And to do that, we want to be able to both educate them on the process so that their risk tolerance is a little bit better. And then at the same time, we also want to help them risk manage because we don't want them to leave the service with a lot of energy to be able to try to balance the opportunity cost of them being away so much and then go off into something without some sort of preparation or training, just like we would have done if we were, doing anything for a training exercise or a mission in the military.
Speaking of that, so let's say traditional ways before you guys came along and have been helping veterans. What traditionally would a veteran have experienced without the help of an organization like yours? What would they traditionally kind of go through?
So so that's interesting. The different transition organizations have primarily focused on job placement, which is a fantastic mission. It's absolutely important and critical. And a lot of veterans have benefited from it, but primarily that's because their throughput from those organizations is connecting them to their corporate sponsors, who then are able to place them within their organizations. Organizations that are very veteran friendly, very interested in the capabilities that a veteran brings to their company. The second thing that's kind of come up is that there's been some of the veteran transition organizations that have focused on venture ideas. So you have a new idea, you have a new venture, and you want to figure out how to fund it. You want to figure out how to scale it. You want to figure out how to get your idea in front of people, so that then you can become a venture entrepreneur. The thing that we noticed was absent from that conversation was anyone who, beyond the initial superficial talking about someone buying a small business, anyone who actually provided the advisory services or consulting or instruction as to how to do it. Thought had been from some other organizations that, if you really wanted to be an entrepreneur and buy something, you had to have a lot of personal will.
Right.
And in order to do that, it was maybe handicapping someone by providing them too much help. And so the typical veteran in the past, they wanted to transition. They engaged, their transition organization or sometimes the transition assistance organization that's within their service. They talked to them. Primarily, that's about, did I get the benefits that I deserve? Am I aware of the employment opportunities? Do I understand the resume aspect of it? Do I understand interviewing? Do I understand how to engage my network? Do I understand my personal value proposition or my why? And that's the primary focus of that, making sure people are employed. And if you were interested in buying a business, in the past, it was that you just got referred out to the Small Business Administration, who then had, a few people that were assigned to be able to help veterans understand the Small Business Administration process. The challenge with that we noticed was that because they're two different languages, so the military and then the Small Business Administration, is that even though I think their website's pretty intuitive, the lack of familiarity with it from someone created an obstacle that for us, we were like, that's a pretty small obstacle that I think that we can be able to address with the proper amount of training and network to be able to help someone. And then the other thing that we were noticing is that people would then, if they were absolutely motivated to own a business, they would then connect to their personal network, try to find someone who had done it. And unfortunately, as most people would know, a lot of people who buy small businesses fail.
Right.
And their feedback typically was predominantly negative. Hey, I did this, it didn't work, don't do it, et cetera, et cetera. Go get a job that's going to pay the rent. Don't invest in this, don't take your personal money and do this. And it's because a lot of people had bad experiences.
Right. That's exactly, you just, you just wrote the entire thing that happened in my own family with my own brother. After he had gone into the military and came out and decided he wanted to start his own business. The amount of challenges, because you're right, he spoke one language, all the places he went that tried to get help were really speaking a whole entire other language with the business speak. And the frustration that he experienced really the first 10 years was touch and go. And he had a young family that he was supporting. So I can't imagine trying to go up against, hey, I'm an expert in my field in the military, and then I come out and I've got an entirely new vernacular and contacts and advice that maybe are not hitting the mark. And I know that's exactly what he faced for over 10 years. Where were you? This is exactly what somebody needs. So when we talk about kind of the programs and the services, I go back to my brother.
Mhm.
Let's say I am a veteran. I'm assuming you want veterans that are, either right out of the military or been a few years in the civilian space, correct?
Right. Either we want to engage veterans prior to them getting out because we want them to be educated passively initially so that they understand it more. A lot of times with a little bit more understanding, they're going to be less fearful about getting involved in it. Not to mention the fact that you're connecting them to a network that we've built that is both veterans and also people from financial services that we've already vetted. So instead of them having to use an old phrase, pick up the yellow pages and then find a random person, a random broker, a random whatever, is
Yeah.
that we're already giving them someone or really in some ways assigning them someone who's there specifically to grow and mentor them,
Mm.
which is much different than the typical transaction-based relationship that ends up happening with you do just open up the yellow pages or Google someone and then try to find a business or broker. The We really do advise people as much as possible to have employment after they leave. So we don't want someone to take on a massive amount of risk by jumping into searching for a business and putting all of their eggs in that basket prior to, because it takes sometimes a year or even two to find the right business. So we want them to make sure that they're employed, that they're going through the other transition organizations that exist that connect them to things that aren't necessarily a 20-year career, but something that they can really still add a lot of value to that organization. So we want them to be able to do that. Because of that, there's also the other group of people that aren't ones that are prior to transitioning, but actually they're the people that we would call boomerangs. So people who have been through these programs, have been out in the world, in the corporate environment, and two things they've discovered during that process. One is that I still have this drive to be able to be my own boss. And the other thing that they've discovered is that they don't want to do the other thing, that they want to not necessarily just have a 401k, which is fine and honorable, but
Right.
you want to be able to own the process. They want to be able to build equity. They want to be able to engage employees in a way that they want to do it, which is for those of us who've served in the military, it's a much different paradigm with how we actually serve the men and women that work with us, um, different than corporate America typically, where we
Mm.
are, either leaders eat last is sort of our moniker, is that we make sure that the people that are doing the work that are closest to turning the wrench are the ones getting the best support.
What's the one thing you wish you would have known as you were in your career, as you started to make your transition over into working in a corporate space? What's the one thing you wish you would have known?
I wish I would have known the opportunity it's really the balancing of that opportunity cost that I talked about earlier. So I
Yeah.
wish I would have understood more the long-term opportunity to do wealth creation, to really create family wealth, for someone who and it's not just my story, it's a lot of people's stories, is that for those of us who have especially been to combat, even if you haven't been to combat, if you've been in a lot of training exercises or you've been responsible for people's lives, is that we are laser focused on, as they say, the men in the mission. And so I didn't do a lot of stuff that made myself truly prepared for an exit or for my next chapter, primarily because I didn't ever want to carry the guilt with me of feeling like I had taken my eye off the ball of things that I was responsible for. Excuse me. So I wish I'd known, and this is one of the things that we're trying to provide. I wish I'd have known someone who had been on the path that we're creating so that I could talk to them. So I knew that I had time and I knew that I could educate myself in a positive way so that then when I was ready to take the leap, I knew enough about it to make a calculated risk, to really to make an informed decision. I just didn't have enough information about how it worked. And I didn't trust, quite frankly, enough of the people that I'd been meeting in small business because I just didn't have any familiarity with them.
Right. Different world. A completely different world. And thank you for saying that. Your journey is like so many other veterans that are coming out. I mean, you're talking two different lives, two different worlds, two different experiences, frankly, two different languages.
Right.
And the fact that you guys have built an Owners in Honor, a place where veterans can come together, that one, I love the fact that you start even with veterans, you're willing to, like, while they're still in service and the transition over. So let's say we could rewind the clock. And so it's back when my brother was first coming out of the Navy. And what would his experience be like? So today, so any veteran that walks in the door that either before their service, hopefully, fingers crossed, walk me through this journey that they go through with your organization. What services can they expect?
Right. So it starts out what we call our phase 0 or entrepreneurial readiness training, because we have to make everything an acronym. So ERT. So and some of that is to create a bridge really between the fact that they've been in the military, and it's helpful to use some of the same vernacular. But really phase 0, if you look at like the different phases of war, is preparation of the environment. So that's where we help the veteran be educated about the entirety of the process of really mergers and acquisitions or entrepreneurship through acquisition, so they understand the different components of it. Then the goal is for them to self-select based on a few categories of things that we have them fill out, anything from a personal financial statement to where is their geography, what's their timing, where exactly do they want to live, because that's the sort of stuff that helps us. Whereas other organizations say, hey, be flexible to the entirety of opportunity so that you can get best placed. For us, it's that we can help you find the right business if we understand exactly where you want to live. So instead of telling us any major metropolitan area, you tell us, hey, I want to live in Columbus, Ohio. It'll make it easier for us to find something for you than trying to scour the entire country for a specific thing. Because as you know, there's millions of businesses that are for sale. So that's the first part. Then after that, then we recommend that they go to a different transition program. And those other transition programs that we mentioned are anything from the Commit Foundation to to the Honor Foundation to the Green Beret Foundation as a Next Ridgeline 2.0 to Special Operators Transition Foundation. And then there's a couple of other foundations that help people get prepared for life after the military and use a lot of things like Simon Sinek's Find Your Why, or create a executive summary so that they understand really they're getting really close to what their purpose is. They probably still haven't activated it, but they're really, really close, because we don't want to focus on that part of what they're doing. We also don't want to focus on their personal mental health. There's other organizations that already do that in a great way, and we're partnering with them.
Right.
The one thing that we do have them engage on is once they start phase 1 is that we're working with a different nonprofit that then helps them do an offsite with their family, because part of being an entrepreneur is getting your family on board. So if
Right.
your family doesn't understand that the mission has changed and doesn't believe in what you're doing and doesn't really emotionally invest, once you're a small business owner, there's there's less compartmentalization of I'm in the military, and when I'm not serving
Right.
or I'm not deployed, I have a different life. Those two Venn diagrams merge a lot. And so it's helping them understand how that's going to change and how it's going to impact their family.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, making sure then that there's a bonding opportunity between them and the owner that eventually when they go through the transaction with them. So once they do that, then it's they get assigned a brokerage consultant that helps them does an interview and helps them understand a little bit more about what it is that they're looking for, and then we start looking for a business for them. The most recent person that we're helping found an opportunity outside of DC. He was looking outside of DC. Now what we're doing, we're in the phase of he just did a letter of intent to that company. So we helped him understand that. We helped him understand what the company did for their own personal valuation of the company. We're connecting him to understand how he could finance it, the different options for his financing, whether it's his own cash, which we recommend against, or it's debt financing using the SBA or a traditional loan, or in our case, and we talked to the owner, is really doing a lot of seller financing. So, and then how much equity and the extra equity distribution. So we recommend that the sellers maintain some equity anywhere between 10 and 15%.
Good.
That's for two reasons. One, to provide that seller some sort of passive income, also to provide them the incentive to make sure that the business is succeeding. And thirdly, so that they become part of the transition process. We don't want a cold start and a guy handing us the keys. We want someone who's there really on the ground for the first 18 months to 24 months, really transitioning that veteran through the process. And then we're there mentoring the two of them and coaching the two of them, because the other benefit, even though primarily our mission and really our main mission is to serve veterans, what we've found is that there's a secondary benefit that comes from that, and that's really serving that exiting owner, especially if they're someone who is exiting because they're looking forward to retirement,
Uh-huh.
is that a lot of small business owners, when they exit their businesses, find lack of purpose. They get struck with a lack of purpose because their identity has been tied to that business sometimes for 3 decades.
Right.
And similar to a person in the military who's exiting something that they've been tied to identity-wise for a long time, psychologically, it's a pretty big confrontation psychologically. And so for us, we want them to be incorporated into what we call our owners and honor circle of owners, that then they become mentors for the next people up. So they also have an opportunity to give back, and they stay connected to the thing that they cared about, which a lot of times is this baby of a business.
Mhm.
So then as we move through, now we're operating the business. Now you get assigned a coach, you get assigned a mentor, like ideally one of those mentors we already talked about,
Right.
and you get assigned a small business advisor. So small business advisor focused on the tactical stuff, day to day, how do you run your business? What systems are you using? How do you clean things up with the books? How do you straighten things out? How do you build a business plan to include an exit plan? And then a coach that's focused more on the strategic. So what are you doing for yourself? How is this affecting your family? What is your financial plan long term? Making sure all that stuff is sewn together. And then the operational person is that mentor that's saying, hey, here are the things that I learned specifically from my experience being a business owner. There's some things that I think that you could be able to implement, or here's someone I would like you to meet.
Right.
Which the other part of owning a small business is a lot of times it's not about what you know, it's who you know. So it's the who can solve this problem, not what can solve this problem more often than not. So it's helping that mentor create a bridge between their relationships that have helped them be successful to the veteran who is now the new owner, that then can cross that bridge and also become successful, utilizing a lot of times those same relationships. And then lastly, as they go toward the end, they're phase 4. So they're looking at an exit, which is what we always want people to build into their business plan. Then they
Right.
get associated with a exit planner and a wealth advisor that we have vetted so that they understand the wealth opportunity. They understand why they want to distribute things the way they do. They understand how to minimize their tax burden, and they can understand how to best set the company up for a sale. And ideally, that sale for us goes to another veteran. So
Okay.
we are supplanting the bloodline generational business with a veteran bloodline generational business instead.
Wow. What you've just laid out, it is something that is transformational of a life, but of lives. Like you said, you bring in the family, you involve the family. It's transformational in the amount of skills. I mean, so many entrepreneurs get into a space and they have a high failure rate
Mhm.
because of the fact they don't have this support system. They have a great idea or a concept, but it's the execution. It's the daily things that you're talking about, and the fact that they've got people they can mentor to, and then ultimately even sell back into when
Mhm.
they're ready to transition into another opportunity or another thing that's out there. And what is it that makes, because you've seen entrepreneurs on all sides, on the military
Mhm.
side, that grew up in quote unquote corporate. What makes a military veteran stand out from other entrepreneurs?
So I would say a big part of it is that we come from a culture of development, training, and mentorship at the end
Right.
of the day. That's really what any of us do. So we are constantly considering succession planning, constantly. And it's forced upon us all the time. And while we love country, while we love our units, while we love our, various military services, really what we love are the people that work for us. And so, and I would say that most of the leaders would actually change that phrase in the sense that the leaders work for their people. So it's that difference of I'm going to be successful because I'm going to make my people successful, vice I'm going to be successful and I'm going to try to hire people that are going to help me be successful. It's very often the very, very good leaders, and this is non-commissioned officers, the very good leaders and the people that you would follow through, fire are the ones that one would always lead by example, two would never ask you to do something that they wouldn't do, and three are always considering what they can do to support you first. So give you a chance to show the initiative and then ask your leadership, this is what I need for support. And
Mhm.
then that's a good leader says, this is what I can do to support you. Here are your boundaries. These are some things that you're not going to be able to get as support. You have to be able to manage that risk and you have to prioritize it. And that's what we do constantly for decades sometimes.
And it's so transferable.
Right.
Like every single skill you said, I've always seen with leadership, what sets a great leader apart? And by the way, the fact that you start with why with Simon Sinek, you had me. You're really doing from all the way through. I mean, birth start of this new opportunity all the way through the sale. It's generational wealth.
Mhm.
It's changing the future and dynamics. It's a massive part of our economy here in the US
Mhm.
is entrepreneurs, is the small business space. And you're creating a space for people that naturally have already a built-in taught, learned natural skill set that's transferable over into the space and giving them the tools to help kind of put the bumpers on it to go, hey, like all the rest of us that have been out in the entrepreneurial space, these
Mhm.
are exactly the things you want and you need. And the fact that you've pulled them together in a space where if I go out and Google it, basically my first few options are going to be paid advertising. Is
Mhm.
that the right one? Or do I want to go with the company who's on page 2 or 3 or 4? The fact you've already done that investigation work for the veteran, for this business owner, that's
Mhm.
ultimately for their family, their community, like that's a treasure trove. I think back to my brother, like that 10 years of trying to figure out it was the yellow pages, like you said, going back through trying to figure out why is this one better than this one, and you guys have already done a lot of that work for sure.
The one thing that I failed to mention when I was talking about that support team that Owners and Honor provides the veteran buyer
Huh?
is that one of the people in that support team is at least one of them is going to be a veteran. And
Yeah.
then for us, as we mature as an organization and there's more businesses that we've been able to help be purchased, those businesses that are like businesses will all be placed in pods of their own, similar to like the Young Presidents Organization or something of that nature, where then they have the opportunity to flatten communication and solve problems together without us even mentoring it. Because a lot of the stuff that we've learned in the military, especially special operations, is that sometimes good ideas get stifled by too much control or leadership. And if you can provide a forum that is lightly monitored, that then allows people to share ideas directly, a lot of times you can iterate on things so much faster because you're having multiple ideas come in a place that there isn't the sense of bringing up a bad idea and being shot down by the boss, because
Yeah.
people are just kind of trading ideas back and forth. And then the other thing is that our main focus is really on buy side instead of sell side of
Okay.
a deal. And really it's providing sellers extraordinarily prepared buyers.
Hmm. Which is a huge, that the M&A space with mergers and acquisitions, the heartache of going through and realizing I thought it was one thing, it's actually another, learning what everything means. I mean, just frankly, military has in its own language. Mergers and acquisitions has a whole new language to add on to that. So the fact that you guys are preparing them for that,
Mhm.
that's no small feat. That's a big, and it accelerates the entire process, and the learning curve gets shortened quite a bit for sure.
That's right.
So I'd love to ask you, someone like me, what can people do to help out your organization? What volunteer things are out there, or how can people, the general public, basically help in a cause that is really important? What can we do?
Right. So we're always developing opportunities for subject matter experts to volunteer. So anyone who has any experience in the M&A process at all, to include small business owners. So we're looking to build that pool of mentors that
Okay.
are people that are interested in giving back to the community. Especially like I was talking about the value proposition for an exiting owner before. There's a lot of owners who have exited in the last 5 years who have really struggled finding purpose.
Mm,
And this is a great way for them to find purpose, is that, you know, some of them unfortunately ended up selling to different firms or potentially even closing their business entirely because they couldn't find a sale.
okay.
And now they would have very much liked to have mentored a child into how they could do better at a business, and how they could prevent the sometimes catastrophic result that they had with their business from happening to someone else. The other side of it is that there are people that are, in the brokerage space, that are people are in the, financial services or banking space that, the more we can connect to people that can help people do debt financing that, or so the SBA just guarantees the loan, but they don't provide the loan. So the more we can connect to local lenders in the spaces that are interested in veteran-owned businesses, as they know, veteran-owned businesses are typically run much more efficiently. They have a longer lifespan once they do get up and underway, and they're much more likely to contribute to their communities. Any chambers of commerce that are interested in engaging businesses within the chamber of commerce that are potentially off market. So there's a lot of businesses in this smaller, Main Street area that we're looking in that are business owners that really haven't considered exit. So of the 6 million businesses valued at under $5 million in the United States, only a third have had any exit planning preparation at all. So of that, another third will probably sell. And then the last third, likely in the next 10 years, will just close their doors forever. So and partly it's because they're not seeing the value in the business that they have, because
Right.
they've just run it forever and it's been their main paycheck. And so they assume that they're just going to have a merger with a partner, that they're going to sell the parts of the company to someone else, or that they're literally one day just going to shut the doors and turn off the lights, and that's it.
Mm,
And it's been surprising how often that's been happening. The
right.
more we interview people, the more it's come to us or come to our attention that that's more common than I'd initially expected. Um, and then, lastly, any advocacy for anybody that would be a corporate sponsor that would make sense for someone who cares about blue collar jobs, someone who cares about the trades, someone who cares about Main Street businesses, someone who cares about veterans, someone who's on the supply chain of those, trades businesses or blue collar businesses. So your, big box stores, whether it's Home Depot or Lowe's or, Carhartt or, DeWalt or Milwaukee Tools, all of those organizations and all of those businesses are going to get hurt if those smaller businesses don't find someone to succeed in.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, that's how they're, that's the long game of them being able to maintain their supply chain, is that they have to have customers. So what we're trying to do is help them maintain customers, and ideally a very vibrant scene of customers that gives them a little bit more negotiating power versus selling all of it to a private equity firm, conglomerating it, and then the private equity firm negotiating with all these supply side people, as a conglomerate or an aggregate
Right.
that then makes it very, very challenging, sometimes profit wise, for those big companies. So there's a lot of benefit to capitalism, to Main Street, to people's jobs, to a lot of stuff like that. So that's the main, I think, way that people could help.
The fact you bring in, because that is something I did not, when you said like a third are walking away and, I've had this job, I've had this built up, beautiful business for years. It's time to retire, never thought about it. That part of it is like how many businesses could potentially be, hey, turned over. It's a great opportunity for somebody. It's already established. And like you said, on the corporate, the larger, like DeWalt, Carhartt, the Home Depots, the Lowe's, the Ace Hardwares, all of them, those relationships with small businesses, keeping those relationships as part of their sales strategy. So it makes sense to have that overlay from the corporate side that can help you guys as well as a small business. And I want to say personally, our space, our expertise is obviously in sales training, in leadership training. Also, a big thing for us is change management, because
Right.
we help companies that are going through M&A right now. And we would love to do that, to share with your teams that are going through it, with your population, with veterans, so that they understand the psychology and the brain science behind what's happening during this crossover event and what they can do to best help and to serve their future potential clients. So I'm throwing my hat in for sure. I know my business partner, Leslie Ray, will absolutely the same way. It is the fact that we've got so many businesses that are really going away, that somebody else now has to restart and do all that heavy lifting. So I've got, let's say I've got a business. I've got a business out there. What's the best way for me if I'm thinking, hey, 5, 10, 15 years, 3 years, 6 months, I want to maybe retire. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the best way is to go to our website,
Okay.
www.ownersandhonor.org. And so right in the very top, it says there's a couple different things in our top bar. One is you want to buy a business. The other one is you want to sell a business. So if you want to sell a business, and there's already been a couple dozen businesses that have contacted us just through word of mouth that have said, hey, I'm thinking about selling my business. Maybe not going to be for a couple of years, but I'd like to add my business to the businesses that you're looking at. One, because I wanted to, if possible, I'd like to transition my business to a veteran. And some are veteran business owners, some are not. And some are because they feel that we are going to, the value statement that we have is that we want to buy their business for fair market value. We're not going to try to cut their knees out. We don't want them to have a check and then exit completely. We want them to be part of the process, because we, to your point, the psychology of M&A, a lot of it goes into fear. And so it's the fear of the unknown and the fear of the change and the fear. And so for us is that not only are we providing that network of people for the veteran, once that business owner becomes part of our network as a seller, then they're part of our network too. So they are also then part of a fabric of, or a community that still finds value in what they've learned, all the wisdom they've gained. Because for us, that's invaluable, because it's their amount of information and knowledge that they've learned through cost of blood, treasure, and sweat is stuff that we don't have to do again.
Right.
And it's one of the biggest things that we try to teach people when we transition into combat zones, is that you need to have a really positive transition with the unit that's exiting, because you don't want to learn those same lessons again because they cost a lot. In
Yeah.
one of those three manners, they cost a lot. So let's take all of those things that we learned from at such a high cost and make sure that the unit or the organization coming in after you benefits from it, so that then ideally everyone benefits long term and we can sustain it at a much better rate or much less costly rate in the future.
Hmm. Patrick, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming in today. This has been absolutely outstanding. Just, I've learned more things. Like I said, I wish now that I had this from my brother. I wish I had this, some of the lessons you're talking about when I made the jump from corporate in my own form into being an entrepreneur myself. So I want to say thank you very much, Patrick, for coming in today. Owners in Honor, check them out, ownersinhonor.com, right?
.org.
.org. Thank you very
Nonprofit.
much.
Yeah.
Top of the page, like you said, buy, sell, get in touch. It's right there. If you've got somebody in your life that you know, hey, they've talked about in the future, maybe retiring, make the connection. If you yourself have someone who is in the military right now, who's active military and is thinking about what does the next phase of life look like, please share this with them as well. It's ownersinhonor.org. Have them reach out, have them make those connections, have them leap forward to the next part of their career. Again, I want to say thank you, Patrick, for joining us in, and hopefully we'll see you all next time.